Abraham Lincoln is often considered the greatest American president. But if he were to navigate today's political landscape, which side would he choose? During Lincoln's time, the Democratic Party was dominated by right-wing conservatives, particularly in the South. These individuals fiercely supported states' rights and the institution of slavery, driven by a desire to maintain their economic and social order. Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy and a staunch Democrat, once said that slavery was the most safe and stable basis for free institutions in the world. This view was widely held among Southern Democrats, who saw any threat to slavery as a direct threat to their way of life. The Democratic Party's platform in the 1860s explicitly defended slavery. In the 1860 Democratic National Convention, the party affirmed that all efforts of the abolitionists or others made to induce Congress to interfere with questions of slavery are calculated to lead to the most alarming and dangerous consequences. These Democrats were staunch, right-wing conservatives, vehemently opposed to progressive changes. They fought to preserve their way of life, which included maintaining racial hierarchies and resisting federal efforts to ensure civil rights for Black Americans. The Ku Klux Klan, founded in 1865 by former Confederate soldiers, quickly became a violent arm of the Democratic Party in the South, using terror to maintain white supremacy and intimidate Black voters and Republican politicians. In stark contrast, the Republican Party of the 1850s and 1860s was founded on liberal and progressive principles. They championed the abolition of slavery and sought to modernize the American economy through industrialization and infrastructure development. Did you know that the term Grand Old Party, or GOP, originally referred to the party's progressive fight against the entrenched interests of the time? They were the disruptors, pushing forward new ideas and challenging the status quo. The Republican Party emerged as a coalition of anti-slavery activists and modernizers. Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, embodied these liberal and progressive ideals. Interestingly, the early Republicans were known for their innovative use of technology, such as the telegraph, to coordinate their anti-slavery campaigns. They were ahead of their time in using new media to spread their message. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 was a landmark liberal and progressive move, declaring all slaves in Confederate states to be free. This act cemented his legacy as a leader committed to social justice and human rights. The Emancipation Proclamation was initially criticized as a mere symbolic gesture by some, but it fundamentally shifted the war's moral compass and paved the way for the 13th Amendment, which would permanently abolish slavery. During Reconstruction, Republicans led efforts to rebuild the South and integrate formerly enslaved people into society with full civil rights. They passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which abolished slavery, granted citizenship, and protected voting rights. The period of Reconstruction was also a time of technological advancement. The Transcontinental Railroad, championed by Republican leaders, was completed in 1869, symbolizing the nation's reunification and progress. As the decades passed, the political ideologies of these parties began to shift. By the early 20th century, Democrats like William Jennings Bryan advocated for a stronger federal government and social justice, setting the stage for modern progressive policies. The Great Depression saw Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal, a series of progressive reforms aimed at reviving the economy and providing social safety nets. This marked the Democratic Party's shift towards supporting extensive government intervention in the economy. The Civil Rights Movement further solidified the ideological realignment. Northern Democrats championed civil rights, leading to significant legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Meanwhile, many conservative Southern Democrats began shifting to the Republican Party, driven by opposition to these changes. The Southern Strategy and Modern Political Landscape. The Republican Southern strategy in the 1960s and 70s aimed to attract conservative Southern voters by appealing to states' rights and traditional values. This realignment resulted in today's political landscape where the Republican Party is seen as more conservative and the Democratic Party as more progressive. Today, the political landscape has fully switched. The Republican Party is now associated with right-wing conservatism, with some extremist groups like the KKK supporting its candidates. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party is led by liberals and progressive-minded leaders, advocating for social justice and extensive government intervention to ensure equality. So, if Lincoln were alive today, his liberal and progressive stances on civil rights and social justice might align more closely with today's Democratic Party. However, his commitment to preserving the Union and promoting economic modernization reflects the complexities of our political evolution. Understanding this history helps us grasp the dynamic nature of political ideologies and their impact on our nation.